Hello, Film Reverie listeners. This is Michael Beckmeyer, along with
The balding Ewok.
the balding Ewok, Bradley Kingston, also Jeffrey Lebowski, the chill cat. Today we have our special guest, Scott DuPont, who is he's got a wealth of knowledge about raising money for movies. He's a producer and actor, and he's got his own stuff that he's working on that we're going to talk to him about. He's mostly going to tell us exactly everything we need to know about how to raise money. So by the end of this episode, we should all have our films financed, and so many more movies will be out into the real world. How's it going?
I'm doing great, but
No
I'm
pressure.
a little bummed out that you moved Jeffrey the cat. So hopefully he's not
We
too
woke him
upset.
up.
He's here.
Great to be here.
So before we get started, we have like a ton of things we could talk about. Go ahead and just tell everybody like a little bit about yourself, where you are, who you are, how you are, all that.
Well, we reconnected about a month ago in Orlando when I was on the film finance panel at the Orlando International Film Festival. And the greatest compliment Cooge gave me on my introduction to the audience was, "He's one of you." And what he meant by that is I'm a filmmaker. I started out as an actor many, many years ago in the Orlando, Florida market, Central Florida. And after a few years, I became a frustrated actor, seeing all the big roles, even some of the 5 and unders, 5 lines or less, being flown in from LA or New York. And we had a huge, incredible talent base in Florida, and it just really upset me. So that's when I started putting on my producer hat. Started with a short film, then did my first feature. And here I am 25 years later, a couple dozen films, a lot of acting credits, but raising the money for a movie, it seems to be from all my fellow producers, actor producers, writer producers, whatever end of the business you're in, if you want to do your own film, the cash always seems to be the crippling point. And if we have time later, I'll tell you a short story about really what gave me my why I'm doing this. So I'm not really acting as much. I did 2 roles during the pandemic, but I've really been focused on this, finance your movie. And I'm not in production in another movie right now. So that's kind of here we are. But I have a very powerful why I'm doing this. And before you decide to make your own movie, whether you're a writer, you want to see it get to the screen, or whether you're 2 producers and you've done a bunch of micro budgets and you're ready to finally step up and do a lower budget, but still you need $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, you got to have a strong why, because it is a challenge. I'm going to be brutally honest here, because platitudes don't serve anyone. It really takes a lot of work, but if you know the steps, it's actually quite simple. It just takes a lot of commitment and hard work, and anyone can do it.
I feel like I'm at the age in my life where I assume that just because I'm feeling something, I'm not the only. When I'm feeling something, or I have a whatever, I'm not the only one. So I assume that it's almost like feeling like, first of all, imposter syndrome kicks in, but also the crossing over, or transcending like the micro budget, the no budget, low budget, how a lot of films get made every year, good ones, bad ones, but it's hard to make a film, whether it's good or bad. Is my assumption that I don't know what I'm doing to raise money for a film. Like, there's a lot of ins and outs, and by the way, sometimes you need money to raise money. And so I have typically, like in the past, not necessarily where we are right now, but I feel like a lot of people, they sort of like reject the notion, so they just keep doing what they have always done, because they assume that it's too hard, or that none of my family I don't have any rich uncles, stuff like that. So like, well, maybe I'm just going to keep making movies like this and hope somebody sees my my low budget effort, my micro budget or
Yeah.
zero budget effort, and somehow I become the next Steven Spielberg that way. But listening to you talk in your podcast that I've listened to, and the panel that you sat on, you clearly know what you're doing, and you know the process, but you also make it sound, you talk it down to where, in chunks, where like somebody like me who's never done it before, who might not be a finance person, who is literally an art guy, raising money is like the classic struggle of art versus commerce. So trying to raise money for a movie so you can do bigger and better productions, and try to hopefully maybe make money off of a film at some point. So your process is very helpful. It's very helpful listening to you, or it's kind of like having a mentor saying, here's what you do first. So I'm sure you run into that a lot. What did you do to eventually break through that yourself when you first started? Because you made your podcast, you talked about financing a film through somebody you played frisbee with, at a film shoot, and it's just you listening to you talk. It's like, oh, I just need to
Play more frisbee.
go play more frisbee. So what do you have to say for yourself?
So first thing, I've learned a lot because I made so many mistakes. I've stepped in so many potholes. So that's part of it, is years and years of experience. You learn what works, what doesn't work. When you're talking to potential investors, what really engages them, what drives them to open up the business plan and read it more quickly than saying, oh yeah, I got the business plan, Scott, I'll take a look at it in a week or two. Mm-hmm. And then you keep following up. So all these different things. So that's part of it. It's just trial and error. The first part you mentioned, you said something like naivete or innocence. I believe that's a good thing. If you can mix that with some of the blueprint, the strategies, because when you're young and Robert Rodriguez and you want to do a feature film and everyone's telling you, no, you can't do it. You at least need $7,000. You can go sell body parts in a clinic.
Body parts, yeah.
To make your movie. If you're the Blair Witch guys and, 5 kids just out of UCF, where you guys are, and everyone tells you, you at least need this much money, and you should just go do some more shorts. And we don't really understand the concept of a mockumentary. It's never been done before. Their naivety, their innocence just said, you know what, we're going to do it. So I think there should be a healthy balance of that. But one thing you said, I don't know exactly what terminology, and you said something like, oh, you made it sound pretty easy when you lay out the step-by-step thing.
Yes.
It's kind of like when I was making, it's a stupid little analogy, but it's short. I was making pancakes with my girlfriend about a year ago, and we wanted to use a new recipe with almond flour pancakes. And she's one of these people that she pulls up the YouTube video, or she'll pull up literally the exact 2 or 3 paragraphs on the back of the box and read it and measure it exactly. I'm like, listen, I made pancakes for, let me do it. And the first time it was like way too bad because I used the wrong number of eggs. Then the second time I said we should use almond milk instead of regular milk, and that messed it up. So she was getting really, really pissed at me, which she should have, because I wasted a lot of eggs.
You're mansplaining pancakes.
And then we went to the YouTube, and we just followed the steps, the exact ingredients, exact measurement. 5 minutes, we had perfect pancakes. And that's what I'm trying to do now with everything I've learned over 25 years. I try to condense that down into what works, what doesn't.
So what works? Where does somebody like Brad and I, who are working on our, trying to figure out what our next feature is going to be and how we're going to make it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What is the
and
first?
We're shy and humble, and talking to people and saying, "Hey, give us your money on this thing that we probably won't make money, but just give it to
So what's the first thing we need to do?
Well, I like your ethics there. You're a very ethical guy, Brad. But you're both not that shy. So there's a whole bunch of different starting points. I think the most important thing, I teased this at the beginning, is you have to know your why. Okay? Because it's going to be a journey of about 3 to 6 months, hopefully, to raise your money. And then it's going to be a journey to produce the whole film, whether you're shooting 15 days or 30 days, whatever. And then you got post, you might need a little bit more marketing money, and then there's the distribution journey. So it's a long journey from start to finish. And what I mean by the why, and not a lot of filmmakers do this, but I've done it on every single one of my films, is I create a mission statement for every single one of our films, and it drives I'm usually the producer. I sit down with a director and maybe one of my other producers. There's a small team, maybe 3 or 4 people. Say, hey, guys, if I'm going to be the main one raising the money, we all contribute. But I know that I have the mindset. I've done it before, so I can do it again. I want to have the whole team on the same page with this mission statement. And on the film I did most recently, I have a little gold frame in my desk. So I'm looking at this mission statement where I was while we were raising the money for Movie Money Confidential. I did the same thing for a documentary years ago called What is the Electric Car? That we really wanted to educate and inspire more people to drive electric vehicles, to save fossil fuels, and to make the planet a better place. Yeah. And make a healthy return for our investors.
So, I've heard you talk about that on your podcast where I started listening to you. So when I think of a mission statement, I'm thinking of something like Stephen Covey talks about in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who he says live, love, and leave a legacy, basically his formula for figuring out a thing. So, but when I'm thinking of making movies, most of the time I'm like, I just want to tell this thing because it's a good story. So my mission statement must have to be more in depth than that.
Mine would be, I think it's cool.
How about we just finish this fucking thing? How about that for mission statement? We know. So would you share one of your like mission statements for your film? I mean, is that for
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a little bit different for a documentary than it is for a narrative. I'll just read this one. This was a little bit longer. This is Movie Money Confidential, a documentary all about raising money for movies. So our mission is to make a bold, truthful, Academy Award-winning film that for the first time reveals as many secrets as possible on how to finance movies. Our goal is to earn at least a 10-to-1 ROI, return on investment, for our investors and partners, while empowering, educating, and entertaining a massive audience of millions of people.
Okay.
And we looked at all of us, and I actually sent it to my executive producers, the 2 big guys who eventually came in. So all of us still look at that every single day as we're getting really close to finalizing some distribution. But on a narrative film, what you can do, the documentaries are much more mission driven because there's usually a call to action at the end.
It's a cause or something.
But let's say you're doing a narrative film, you can use words like, I want this film to inspire and empower families and fathers to be the best they can be, or something like that. Whatever your broad audience is. And at the same time, be an entertaining film that will make at least a 2-to-1 ROI for all of our investors.
Okay.
That's a good goal. You should at a minimum try to set a target of 2 to 3 times return on investment. Because if you have a higher target and you end up breaking even, kind of squeaking it out, your investors aren't going to be real pissed. They'll be more happy if you get 2-to-1. But the higher the target, the higher the results.
So so you got your why. Let's say you have a script. You're ready to go, or whatever you want to do. You talk a lot about Louise Levison's book, which
Filmmakers and Financing.
Yeah, I should have brought it with me. I've been reading through that book as well. But that book is all about how you need to have like a business plan to approach, because I feel like the way I see it is filmmakers speak in the language of creativity, writing, directing, telling emotional stories. Financiers, they don't talk in that language. They talk in the business plan language, and you kind of have to come to them and translate your thing down into what they want to see and hear from you. But will you talk a little bit about business plans, and is it the business plan for the film, or is it a business plan for your company that is producing the film?
It's a business plan specifically for the film. Each film has a unique business plan. And you really don't want to skimp on this, try to copy something out of a film textbook. I would encourage you to talk to somebody like a Louise Levinson. She does that for a living. By the way, she wrote the business plan for the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah,
and
way back.
Dozens and dozens of other breakthrough films you've heard of. She's done hundreds, but she's had incredible successes, not only in terms of the films getting financed and made, but some of the indie films like Selma Hayek's The Prophet just blew up. So she's got a great track record. But talk to somebody that does business plans, or if you just don't have a lot of money up front, I get it. I've been there. Okay, it's easy to pay $5,000 or $10,000 for a business plan, and then pay $5,000 for these lawyers, and pay all of a sudden you're like $30,000 in the hole. I get it.
Yeah.
So if you can't afford that route, try to pay a small amount of money to a producer who's done successful movies before, maybe comes on board as an associate producer, a consulting producer that can help you with the business plan and kind of give you that whole structure, you use that word mentor earlier. And I'll just go over, because your audience probably knows these things, so I'll just go over a couple of the highlights. It should be anywhere between 5 to 15 pages long on the average. I would say about 10 is a good average. It should have your mission statement. So your investors, wow, these guys know exactly why they're making the movie. So once again, that mission statement comes back into play. Then you have a synopsis or an outline that tells what the story's all about. Okay, this can be one page. It doesn't need to be 5 rambling pages on, because a lot of investors, they're not going to read past the first page. Okay, they're more important to the nuts and bolts, which are the numbers. Then you want to craft the team. Who's your director? Who are the producers? You don't always have to have a DP attached, but if you do, that's great. 3 or 4 team members, maybe 5 at the most, and their resumes. And here's the thing, guys. There are lots and lots of first-time filmmakers out there. So if you haven't done a feature-length narrative or a feature-length documentary, that's okay. But you should have some experience doing a bunch of shorts, or maybe you've done some music videos that have won some awards. So whatever your biography is, whatever your story is behind there, put all that in, and that really should be edited or tweaked by an expert, because we know the language that will most attract investors. Even certain words can really attract or repel potential investors. And then you get to the what we call the comp table. So if you're going to buy a house, the first thing the realtor is going to do is like, oh, here's a bunch of comp listings, comparable houses in the same neighborhood. So you want to compare. Let's say you're doing a documentary film that's independent, meaning it's under $2 million. It could be $100,000. The budget's not necessarily make or break. It could be $200,000. But you can list out maybe 5 or 10 other independently made or lower budget, under $2 million documentaries, okay, what their budget was and what they grossed. So a potential investor say, hey, if we get lucky, like when I did What is the Electric Car, the first movie I put in my comp table was Who Killed the Electric Car, which Chris Payne, my friend, did a few years ahead of me.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Got great movie. Most people have. I forget the budget on that. It was very, very low. Got picked up by Sony. I think it made $2 million.
Yeah.
So that was a great comparable to show there was an interest in electric cars. A friend of mine, Chris, did this low budget documentary. got picked up by Sony, boom. Same thing with narratives. You can just pick a romantic comedy genre, a horror genre, whatever, have a whole bunch of independent films. You don't want to take a studio film because there's no relevance.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then you get into the last page is or one of the last pages you do a breakdown. You have like a pie chart. Okay. 50% of the pie, kind of dumb it. I don't want to disparage investors in any way, but not every film investor that I bring onto one of my films has invested in a film before. So I try to kind of just dumb it down. I'm not saying that in a derogatory term. So it's easy to understand. So I have a pie chart. Roughly 50% of all the money coming into my production company for this movie is split between all the investors. Mm-hmm. The other 50% is split with it's called the producer side of the pie. And that might include one or two actors. We don't have enough of a salary to make it really enticing. Maybe we give them an extra point or two. Maybe we end up giving an extra point to our DP because he's willing to cut his rate or she's willing to cut his rate. So all those different producers, director, writer, all those things. Okay. Then one of your last pages will be, okay, what does it cost, or what is the investment to be part of this really exciting merry-go-round ride? Okay. Right. So there's a couple of reasons why people invest in films. I have not found one of those people who says, Scott, I'm an artiste. I don't really care. Here's $50,000. Go play. I haven't found those people. Some people have. 99% of all my investors, they want to know how they're going to make money. That's why I put the comparable table chart in.
Right.
Okay. And I might show some different scenarios on distribution. Then when it comes down, so they want to get a return on their investment, but a lot of the other emotional elements, and we can get into that later, also come into play. Like, hey, you're going to get invited to the world premiere. You're going to be on the red carpet with some of the movie stars. You're going to be able to visit set. We can put your granddaughter in the movie as an extra if you want.
Yeah.
So all that stuff. So the last table, and I'm shocked, a film business plan I just looked at a couple of days ago. I did not take them on as a client because they just didn't have their act together. They didn't even have this most important chart. Is kind of like, okay, what are the investment rates? So let's just say, okay, my minimum for this film, which is not much at all, is $5,000. Okay, well, what does $5,000 get me? And on this little table, you get one gross point of all the money that comes in. No deductions, no expenses. 5,000 gets 1 point. It's really clear, really simple to understand. You get a thank you in the credits. Okay, then you bump up to 10,000. Maybe 10,000 gives you an associate producer credit, a couple other perks. Okay, how about a co-executive producer? Okay, 25,000. You want to be an executive producer, 50,000. And the grand poobah, if you want to be an executive producer with a sole title credit, I mean, no one else is on your space. Executive produced by John Smith. That'll cost you 100,000, and you have all kinds of other perks. So that's really, really important as well. And then, of course, the most important thing is the risk disclosure, which Brad, you already shouted out. It just, there's you can't hide it. It's going to be in your investment agreement anyway, your investor agreement. So just put that in there, saying, hey, investing in films has some very unique risks, and you may or may not get all your money back or any money back.
So you were talking about points. I've always tried to figure out exactly how you figure out how many points there are on a project. Because if the filmmaker side, like if the producer side of the pie keeps 50%, or you said you could go even as much as 60-40, to where the producer side keeps like 40%. Control basically is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So how do you figure out, like, if the analogy used in your podcast was $1,000 will buy you 1 point? I
Yeah,
think is
that's a micro budget. Let me just talk about the $250,000 budget, because that's a really common, that's a very easy amount of money to raise too. I mean, you can raise that sometimes.
it's great to hear you say that because
Yeah, because we're not talking about 500,000,
Right.
a million, 2 million. There are still people in Hollywood, some friends of mine, that are raising 5, 7, 9 million for an independent. I think they're crazy because there's a little bit of uncertainty in the theatrical market right now.
yeah.
And I don't even want to go in that world. I don't want to put my investors at their risk. So $250,000. Let's talk about that for a second. Okay. So you just do the math. $5,000 is 1 point. Okay. Now, if you want to get to 50 points and you sell 50 individual shares, 50 percent times 5,000, that's $250,000.
Okay.
The math is really, really easy. Now, what you talked about, Michael, was 60-40. Let's just say and this usually happens when things go well. Because if you're really tight with your budget. Oh, by the way, one other thing that must go in the business plan is a top sheet, the top page for your budget. So it's just a quick summary that potential investors can see. So I never go, I don't want to say never because I might have gone over a little bit, but I usually never go over my budget, and I usually stick to my schedule because I'm disciplined and all the people around and my team are. I know you guys are very disciplined filmmakers too because you've done a bunch of films.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, and I applaud you for that, and you've made them.
Thank you. You're one of the few people who actually applaud us for that kind
No,
of
absolutely. That's a big thing. And it's a lot harder to make a feature film when you have very, very little money. $250,000, you're not going to have huge salaries. It's not going to be cushy, but you'll have enough support people to make a great film. Now, what happens sometimes is you might get a higher named star that comes on board. You need to pay her a little bit more money. Or maybe you got access towards the end of the shoot to an incredible location like this big 100-foot yacht. And the executive producer said, yeah, I'll take you out on this yacht, but it's going to cost you $10,000 because I got to pay my crew. I got to pay for diesel fuel, all this stuff. You'd be crazy not to figure out a way to make that happen if you have opportunities to show up as long as you're responsible. Now, in that point, let's say you've already raised the $250,000. Okay, you've sold 50 points. Okay, now if you're the main producer who's raising the money, you fixed your other points for your associate producer, your director. You have a little bit of wiggle room. I usually start 10 to 15 points for Scott DuPont personally. Okay, if I'm raising the money, I don't mind if we have an opportunity to get that $1 million yacht, which costs $10,000. I'm like, hell yeah, we want to open the whole movie on a yacht, which I did on a movie, by the way. I'm happy to sell 2 points. Remember, a point is $5,000, and shave that out of my 15 points. All of a sudden, I'm at 13 points, Scott DuPont's, because I have fewer points, but in a better quality movie. And I've crunched all the way down to 4 or 5 points. Yeah. If I can get some crazy actors attached or some crazy marketing hooks attached to my film. Because once again, my mission, and I look at this every single day, part of my mission in every single one of my films is about my investors and how I'm going to get them a return on investment. So I'm like, you know what? If we really want to stick true to our goal of a 10-to-1 target, now we don't know whether we're going to get there. I'm willing to crunch my points down. Now, I'd rather have 5 points of a really fantastic film and try to keep 15 points of a mediocre film, if that makes sense.
Totally. And so you're talking about there's like 100 points out of a thing. You got to split that 100 points up amongst whatever. Okay.
50 to the investors, roughly 50 point to what we call the producer side, which may include your director, writer, some other people that come in. And the investor side is always locked. So let's say an investor comes in for $10,000. They come in early in the game. They don't have enough to be a producer, but I'll stick my toe in the water for $10,000. You can never, according to my investor agreement, those 2 points will never dilute. They will never change. If our budget blows up to $300,000, It doesn't matter. All of the investors on the 50% side, they're all locked and they're all gross. I mean, it doesn't matter if there's expenses, doesn't matter if extra investors come on board later. They're all fixed and locked, which makes the investors feel really warm and comfortable.
So what if you got your 1 point is a $5,000 investment, but mom shows up and says, I've got $2,500. Do you ever sell half a point, or?
You really can't do that. Now, you can have a little clause in there if you want that you can split. So let me show you how that exact example came up on my last movie. A cousin of mine, Disney cousin, I don't even know her very well. She's like a third cousin, but she's a sweetheart. She wanted to invest, but she couldn't put in the $5,000, or maybe she didn't feel comfortable enough to put in the $5,000. Mm-hmm. So she circled back to her father, and they talked. They said, hey, my father's going to help me. We're going to come in together. I said, great. You pick right now on the investor agreement who you want me to send the check to. Okay, it's either you or your dad, mm-hmm. and that'll be the investor on record. And as a perk, I'll put both of you guys in the end credits as a special thank you. So they both got recognition. The daughter and the father split the points. I got a $5,000 check. They're both happy.
So that's interesting. That's good. So you doubled up, but you still let people come in for half the cost. Like they split it basically.
Yeah.
Split the bill. So what about? I feel like the main thing that has eluded me is I don't even know where to start looking for people.
Yeah.
With money. Like, yes. First of all, and I told Brad this the other day, and I've talked about this a lot. One of my favorite podcasts is an NPR podcast called How I Built This.
Love it.
And that show is all these companies that you know of, you've heard of. They're out in the we use them every day. Like Belkin was a thing, and just a whole bunch of different things. And not one of them has. It seems like not one of them has ever come on and didn't get their start by first exhausting all of their friends and family to get to their first $5,000, $10,000, whatever. So I know I personally haven't ever done that, where I've called every single person in my family and been that obnoxious person who's trying to raise money for a thing that you're never going to get money back for. But I haven't exhausted that. We have run crowdfunding campaigns before. And, family and friends will send money. But I've never exhausted the, officially, filmmaker, we're making a thing, do you want in, blah, blah, blah. But once you've done that, where do you go? I think I kind of know where your answer is. It's like it doesn't really. You can go anywhere, but where are some of the places
where do you start? If you've never done it.
Okay. So I have 4 or 5 modules in my program where I break down 4 different things you just talked about. So I'm just going to give a quick overview to each of them because they all kind of fit together. And I call this the investor train. You remember at the festival I drew that graph?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could just briefly summarize exactly every little step we need to do. Just briefly, keep it down.
25 hours, I can do that, along with a phone call once a week to work with you one-on-one.
To talk you off the ledge, right?
Okay. So there's a big mind shift, and once you understand this, it takes all the pressure off your shoulders. It literally changes everything. Because I used to be the same way. It's like, I think my first feature, the minimum was either $2,500 or $5,000. This was back in the 1990s. This is a long time ago. So it was a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And it was very uncomfortable asking a family member or a brother-in-law or my next door neighbor, people closest to my life for a $5,000 check. And also in the same conversation saying, hey, there's a chance you could lose all your money. Because you have to disclaim that. It's going to come up sooner. You might as well be upfront and honest about it.
Yeah.
So the big shift, and I'll try to do this in just a few minutes, is you almost want to think about how if a friend came over to your place right now, your studio, and said, Michael, Brad, you gotta see this new Jason Statham movie. It's unbelievable. Like this is better than Transporter 1, 2, and 3. And the opening sequence is like da da da. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So you gotta shift. It's like, oh God, I hope I get $5,000 from my cousin. I hope I get $5,000 from my brother-in-law. I hope I get $5,000. You gotta shift it to, hey, I got this incredible mission statement. I got this awesome team. We've been talking about this movie for a year. A year we've been talking about it, and now we're finally making it. This is really, really exciting, okay? And I simply want to share that exciting story to all my family members, okay? And here's the big thing. It doesn't matter whether they come in or not. It really doesn't, okay? And here's another thing I'm going to add a little bit of icing on the cake. And I call this the Blair Witch effect. You guys remember what happened, okay? There were people in Orlando that came back to Greg Hale, that came back to Dan Myrick, some of the 5 hacks and film guys, after they made almost $400 million.
Yeah.
And they said, you greedy son of a bitch. You mean to tell me we're in the same class? And you didn't tell me I can get into this film for $500 or $1,000? How dare you? There were lawsuits. So I keep that in mind. What if you can't predict what movie's going to blow up, like Open Water or Cabin Fever or Paranormal Activity? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There are breakthrough films every single year. What if your film, at a low budget, by the way, at $250,000, you have a hell of a lot more upside than my indie filmmaker friends out here in Hollywood that are trying to do a $7 million budget.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's a lot of upside. So what you're doing is you're sharing the message, okay? And you should feel guilty about not telling your grandmother, your mother, and you don't prejudge anyone.
Yeah.
You can't say,
I'm laughing at you because you're right, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm not laughing at you because I disagree with you. I'm laughing at you because it is so adverse to what I like. I personally, and I know a lot of filmmaker friends, default to, because it's money and because it's friends and because it's family, and you don't ever want to be. But I mean, you're right, and I've listened to you talk about it over and over and over again on your podcast, and I just kind of shake my head, I'm like, okay, we're gonna, you have to. But
So
listening to you talk about,
we need a paradigm shift.
yeah,
Our
it's a
brains.
paradigm shift.
Yeah,
you need
Okay.
to transcend yourself basically and talk yourself.
Yeah, and you don't make it a big deal. Like, you can't go, God, I hope we get a $5,000 check.
Yeah.
None of the team's gotten a $5,000 check yet. We need to get them. So let's say you make the first circle of your family, and let's say you live with your mother. She's 75 years old. She's living pretty much scraping by on Social Security, and you're actually handing her checkbook. Okay, so you know for a fact that she's probably not a good investor.
Hey, you just write yourself a check.
Because you're managing her finances. Every other family member, I don't care if you're really close to them, you don't know. I've heard crazy stories about a brother-in-law who won the lottery, and they purposely, the brother-in-law and the sister, didn't tell the rest of the family because they didn't want to be hit up it was a small lot, it was $500,000, but they didn't want to be hit up. So you never truly know unless you open up everyone's checkbook. So here's the process. Let's say you make a list of 25 family makers, grandparents, brothers, sisters, cousins, second cousins, in-laws, outlaws, whatever. You just go through sharing with all those people. Hopefully, you will have 1, 2, or 3 investors, even if they come in at just the minimum, even if they have to split a $5,000 point. Here's why that's critically important. When you expand that family circle, the next circle out is your friends, your close friends. Okay? The next circle out after that is your social media friends, your connections, your acquaintances. The big circle after that is the universe. Okay, I alluded to on the panel, every film I might get lucky if I get one or two people in the outer universe, like complete strangers. Yeah, I don't know you, Scott. I've never even met you before, but sure, here's $25,000. It usually doesn't happen. It can happen, but the way it normally happens is if someone in one of those other circles is friends with them. Let me give you a specific example. Actually, it's not a perfect example, but on my last movie, there's an attorney who lives in Winter Park named Kevin. I've been sharing my idea of him investing in film for 20 years. 20 years. He said, no, 20 times. I shared this time. I said, Kevin, I'm back again, man. It's been 2 years. I got another movie. He came in. And I said, Kevin, I just got to know. And I'm learning. Every single person who says no, if I'm really good friends with them, I'll circle back later on and find out why. I want to learn. Everyone who says yes, I said, Kevin, why did you finally invest he just invested a small amount, $5K.
Yeah.
And he goes, because I've seen your dedication and your perseverance. I know you made a bunch of films, and I just want to take a little bit of gamble and have some fun with you on this film. That's what he said. So what was cool, unbeknownst to me, Kevin called one of his best friends, another Winter Parker named David, and he said, hey, I've been watching this guy. And by the way, David knows me a little bit, so he's not a complete stranger. He said, hey, I just put $5K in Scott's film. You should invest with me. It'll be fun. Okay?
And
Kevin calls me back.
Yeah, be fun. Go play golf. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Kevin calls me back, and he says, hey, you should call David. He might be willing to invest. So I thought I was going to go through a long, I don't call it a pitch, but a share.
Yeah.
Okay? Got on the phone, like 2 or 3 minutes in, he goes, Scott, I'm in. I go, I haven't even told you all this other stuff. He goes, I don't care. Kevin told me to invest. I know you. Okay. By the way, my friend David is an actor living in Florida. You're talking about an unstable income. Thank God I didn't prejudge him.
Yeah.
And thank God I just kept reaching out. So here's another important point to the whole investor train. You start getting 1 or 2 or 3, maybe more, family members or close friends on, because one of the many objections that will come up. See, write this down, etch it in your brain. I'll repeat it so everyone understands. Some of your potential investors are going to ask you, so Scott, how much skin do you have in the game? That's going to come up. Now, I always try to have a little bit of the skin in the game myself, whether it's bringing on a producer for a couple $1,000s that has more credits than I do, kind of like an anchor to our team, or maybe I don't have a lot of money and I'll put a legal bill for $1,000 on a credit card.
Yeah.
I'll try to have some kind of skin in the game if I can. Now, one time I didn't have that extra money because I'm an actor and a producer. My income goes up and down, up and down. When it's great, it's awesome. But sometimes I go for a couple months with no income. Okay. So in one case, our director, he couldn't put in money at the time. I couldn't put in money, but his son put in money at the time. Okay. So that leads us to the
phone call my daughter is waiting for.
So that's the first rung of the investor train. Either you, when that question comes up, I'll repeat it. Scott, how much skin do you have in the game? I'll say, well, I just put $1,000 in for legal fees. So, I'm paying some of the early development costs. Or I might say, hey, we're both, my director and I were really tight, but the director's son just stepped up for $25,000. Okay. So when your investors hear that you and or a couple of your family members are invested, it changes everything.
Yeah. Because
there's a subliminal thing in the back of their reptilian brain, okay, the flight or fright. It's like, oh, okay, so the director's son put in $25,000. Oh, Scott, you put in a little bit of money. What will have them running for the hills, and what 80% of all filmmakers do, because they don't do this, is when that question comes up, it may come up, it might not, but when it does come up, go, oh, I'm really broke. Do you have any family members? No, they're all kind of broke. Okay, so let me get this straight. I'm a potential investor. You're all excited. You're sharing this film with me, but none of your family members and your closest friends have put a penny in, and you want me to put in $5,000 or $10,000?
Yeah.
You can hear the tires screeching right there.
That makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
If you're willing to
Plus,
risk
it's
your
contagious.
relationships to do it, then they feel safer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the training I do, either one-on-one or in the program, it goes so deep on all these different things. There's so many subliminal elements. There's another element I'll just talk about for 30 seconds. On my last movie, I have my brother, 2 cousins, like 3 of my best friends. They all came in early, okay, because they know me, they trust me. I wouldn't steer them wrong, okay? Plus, I put a little bit of money on my credit card. When you have a core, and it doesn't have to be 5 or 6 people like I had. It can be just 2 or 3. But when you have your mother or your cousin or your brother or your next door neighbor involved, there's a subliminal kind of work ethic drive along with your mission statement that you're looking at every day. You're not going to let your best friend down. You're not going to let your sister down. And that's fuel that just turbocharges the whole process.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned a couple times about the program. You keep calling it the program. It's like Filmmakers Anonymous or something. But
Finance your movie.
Finance your movie. So you have clients that pay you, like you mentor them, like you have clients like consulting,
like a coach, like a mentor,
like a coach. Do you coach them through financing a specific film, so you're part of that film, or is it completely separate? I can call you up and you can say, here's what you should do next with your project. Like I come to you with a random film and you may not give a shit about the film, but this person's asking for your help and they're paying you to walk them through step by step on what they should do next, right?
Yeah. So I don't want to come off in any way as egotistical or because I'm not. I'm one of you.
Yeah.
Every single film, it's a bitch. It's hard. But I know the steps, and that's why I keep financing more films. Yeah. Okay. So when I take any bit of money from anyone for my program, which also includes some one-on-one coaching, and then I also have a mastermind component where I have a small group of like-minded, qualified filmmakers that all get in this beautiful mastermind once a week. It's magic because I'm not always the smartest guy in the room. There might be some guy who pipes in, hey, Dan, let's say there's 5 of us on the call. Hey, Dan, I ran into that same exact problem when we were trying to negotiate with an actor and they held out for $50,000 and that really screwed up our budget. And we're trying to keep raising the rest of our post-production money right now. Let me tell you how I solved it in 30 seconds. Boom, 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 boom. Because Dan has had that experience and he solved the problem for that other filmmaker who had the program. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh wow, I never came across that pothole. I'm gonna take notes on that and just kind of have it in my arsenal.
Yeah.
So here's the bottom line: the people I work with a very, very limited group of people, and it all starts with the project. Okay, so people will email me their film project, and it doesn't have to be a perfect finished business plan. If they have even an outline for a business plan, or they have a synopsis, I don't care if the script is done, because by the way, here's a little secret. I usually never show the finished script to an investor. Let me repeat that. I usually never show a finished screenplay to a potential investor. Okay, it just gives them another 3 or 4 hours of homework to do, and they'll have an excuse saying, oh, I just looked at the business plan last week, but I haven't had another hour or a couple of hours to read the whole screenplay. And they'll keep putting you up. So once I look at the project, I have a marketing background. I'll say, okay, I see an audience for this. I get it. Okay, and then I look at their budget and say, okay, $500,000. This is very, very doable. This niche, okay, I think they have a really good chance at making money back from investors. So that's the first thing, okay? Because part of my fee, and you would ask this question, I don't take any back end points, okay? But I do take usually I take a small deferment. So if I'm working with a client, a huge chunk of my money I will never ever see until my client gets completely funded. So it's almost like I'm a team player. I come on board as a consulting and I'm cheering them on. And also I want to get paid at the end. Yeah. Just like all of them, they want their salaries. The investors want to see the movie break escrow so they can start, the whole production process.
Obviously, listening to you talk, I've been able to pick your brain for, almost an hour now. It's obvious that it's worth having somebody it's always worth having a mentor who's been through the process before.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So do you have and you don't have to say yes or no to or answer this question. Do you have a set rate a rate that you charge? Is it a percentage of the budget, or how do you figure out?
All I want to say is it's a couple $1,000s. So it's not that cheap. And I'm, by the way, I'm not on all these different podcasts or on my podcast say, hey, you got to hire Scott DuPont.
Yeah. You've never mentioned it once. Yeah.
If it's a good fit, and I turned away last month. I turned away a guy from Rollins. I went to Rollins College, so I had a great connection, and he had on a really, really top-notch DP director who I knew. So I felt really comfortable with everything. And then when we started breaking down his business plan, it's all about musical theater. And he wanted to do 5 musical acts or whatever, and it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah, it wasn't your
thing. I said, as much as I'd love to take the consulting fee and come on board, I'm not the right fit. So here's another idea for your audience listening right now. If you want to send me your business plan or synopsis, your pitch deck, whatever you have, I will look at that. If it's a fit, I'll call you back. We can talk. But another strategy, depending where you are listening to this podcast, if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, let's say you're not in Central Florida. If you're in Atlanta, Georgia right now, there are a lot of really talented, skilled veteran producers in the Atlanta area that would be happy for a couple $1,000. Maybe you got to pay 5 or 10, whatever it is, to come on board as a producer, hold your hand and fast track your funding so you get financed in 3 to 6 months. You're not floundering around for a year or two. And by the way, let's say you put $5,000 for this guy in Atlanta who's not only financed a whole bunch of films himself in your budget range so you feel comfortable, they've been successes, but he also knows the Atlanta cast, he knows the Atlanta crew, he knows the landscape there. Okay, so you spend that money. It's like putting turbocharged stuff in your gas tank. You're going to get your film financed really, really quickly. And by the way, you'll be able to pay yourself back that $5,000 that you paid up front for him. I'm just using that arbitrary number.
Yeah.
As soon as you break escrow. So it's not like you're throwing money down the hole. You're investing, you're advancing a little bit of money to get an expert to show you the quickest, fastest way. And I did a lot of programs with Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Stephen Covey over the years, and I got my money's worth. But what really kind of turbocharged my career when I moved from Central Florida to Hollywood, because you got to step up your game when you're out here, is not only did I didn't just buy the $500 to $1,000 programs, but I started investing many, many more thousands with individual coaches and mentors. Okay, because for every dollar I invest in myself, I can get to my destination quicker.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I feel like people should always be learning.
Warren Buffett, the wisest investor in the world. Warren Buffett said, the best investment you can make in the world is investing in yourself.
Yeah. it's grueling, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't have to be. It is hard.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to like wander around, take the investor train up here, down there, up there. You can take the investor train from point A to point B, sometimes in 2 months, sometimes in 6 months. If you know what you're doing, if the conductor of that train has done that journey back and forth a dozen times. I'm
totally with you on that. It's like, I think that so much of what in the world in general, self-reflection, to strip it down to simple terms, self-reflection is required but ignored by so many people. If you listen to, I don't know if you've ever read the book by David Goggins. He's like an ultra athlete. He does things like run 100
I've seen his YouTube videos. He's very inspiring.
Yeah. His book, Can't Hurt Me, he spends a lot of time talking in his book about how, you really have to look in and be honest with yourself that most people haven't even reached, 30-40% of their own potential. He said, and I saw another YouTube video the other day. It just popped up in my algorithm feed where he basically said that every day you wake up is a new opportunity to find your new 100%. And it just is one of those things that in a 2-minute little nugget, you're just like, he's fucking right. Whatever. But I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And his book is a fantastic read. I listen to a lot of stuff while I'm out running and driving around and stuff like that. So let me just jump in on something you said there. The untapped potential. I want to throw a little seed out to every single person in the audience. It can get overwhelming listening to these longer podcasts. You're like, oh, I got to do that, or I got to do that. Just remember, though, one single film festival, 14,000 films get financed and made every single year. That's just one film festival. Happens to be Sundance, a pretty popular one. Yeah, big one. Yeah.
Okay, so what you need to do, just like David Goggins does, he looks around for other proof of concepts. Like, oh, that guy ran that fast, that far, I can do that. Or that guy, those schleps over there got $1 million for their movie. Oh my, Are you kidding me? I can do this.
Yeah, I've found that going to film festivals, that's what I get out of going to film festivals. I'll see another filmmaker's film that even if I don't like, I'm like, those people raise money for that film, and it makes it so much more doable. Like when you watch those films, and I mean, we've had films in festivals before, so it's not like it's never happened. But going there and it legitimizes, but it also it makes those things you're watching up on the screen made by human beings just like you, and it's so easy. And a lot of times, indie filmmaker, I find myself like defaulting to sort of shitting on film festivals because it's like there's so many of them, blah 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 blah. It's over and over and over again, and who's got the money to submit to 100 different film festivals,
and which ones are the best value?
Yeah. And but that is exactly right. You just like reminded me to not be such a cynic about that stuff. I was listening to an episode of your podcast just the other day, and earlier today actually while I was out running, and you said that you signed up for the 2-day film school. I can't remember the guy's name, but I
Job S.S. Simmons.
And you said the best answer he ever gave that you'd ever heard for, I think it was how to raise money how to raise $1 million for a film. You talked about baby steps, and I'm just trying to figure out. Well, first of all, if you want to briefly talk about that for a second, or for however long you want to, you can talk for however long you want to. It's not like I'm sure you have to go before we do. Like how and like where do you? I'm just trying to figure out. I was talking to Brad. We've made a film for we say no money, but I spent money, Brad spent money. And not to mention the amount of time that we put in over 2 years, 3 years, really trying to get the thing made.
Well, less than 25,000 cash.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So almost nothing.
Almost nothing. Even the plucked out of mid-air number you just said, it's even way less than that. So, is trying to figure out which step in the baby steps would you recommend. You said, a $1,000 film, then a $10,000 film, then I think it was 100,000, then a million, and I realize those are just like round numbers you were using to make your analogy. But where do you think people should fall into so that it's not overwhelming trying to raise money? Brad and I probably shouldn't walk out the door and go, we're going to raise $1 million for our next film, and just there's no calling card that we have that would represent us in a way that someone would,
Those are $1 million filmmakers.
Yeah. And at what point do you if you're going to make a $10,000 film or a $50,000 film? We've made $50 films too, by the way. What is do you have any different strategies on finding people to invest, or do you just literally, if you're making a $10,000 film, well, you might not even get out of your friends and family circle, like you were talking about your areas of influence or whatever that you're trying to talk to. I know I asked you a 3-minute question, but
no, I think I can summarize it and circle back if you want. So it all starts with a bunch of short films or maybe a couple music videos. So, okay, these guys are good storytellers, which you are. Okay, then maybe after a couple short films, you go do a micro budget. I would say less than 25,000, maybe even less than 10,000. Okay, and I would suggesting crowdfunding that, get donations, because I would have a tough time looking an investor in the face and saying, hey, you could make your money back. We're only doing a $10,000 budget. I mean, it could happen, but there's a lot of components to post-production, the marketing of the film, to really polish it, to have a really high quality product. So once you do a few shorts, or maybe you do your first feature, I think the next step should be $100,000, or you could stretch a little bit and go to $250,000.
Okay.
Now, I had a guy that came to me this week. He's done a couple shorts and he wants to do a $500,000 web series. And I said, no. I said, I can't really sign on to that. Your team's not strong enough. I would suggest you do a $50,000 or $75,000 pilot, or maybe a couple of episodes, just less risky.
Yeah.
So 100,000 to 250. Then once you do 100,000 or above film, then you're really ready to do a $1 million film at that point.
Okay.
Anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million. I kind of cap my ceiling at $2 million for two reasons. Number one, I just feel a little uncomfortable asking anybody, even if I'm asking my clients to ask their people for anything over $2 million with this uncertain theatrical market.
Yeah.
Okay. And the stuff that's going to come to the theatrical market big time is the Tom Cruise movies, the Fast and Furious 9s, all those. It's going to be crowded to see how much screen pace all these independent films do. Where is if you have $1 million or $2 million or less, you can make that back streaming. There's still the library school market, which is really strong. There's ancillary markets. There's a foreign market. So there's a lot of different options. The second reason, I have never raised over $2 million myself. So I would feel like a fraud. Like, yeah, come on board. I'll show you how to raise money for a $7 million film. It's a slightly different animal.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that fraud.
So when you're saying, okay, so that's where I sort of landed. I sort of thought, okay, we need to land in maybe the $100,000 range on a film. Do you suggest, and this is it's weird because, okay, so which one of our scripts do you think we could do for $100,000, or we want to pick this film, and or do you suggest writing something to that budget scale specifically that you can get behind? Or is there a genre, or can you literally feel like you could raise 100,000 or whatever, raise a certain amount of money for any kind of film as long as you have a strong enough team or business plan? Or
so the number one criteria before, let's say you have 2 or 3 scripts on your shelf right there.
Yeah.
The number one criteria is you want to pick the film that you're most passionate and excited about. and that why, and then we'll work together translating that into a mission statement, and everyone in your team, you're just excited. So it's almost like you're like a drag race at the starting blocks. And it's like, as filmmakers, and I feel guilty of this myself, sometimes I'm like, we haven't gotten to escrow, and I'm just chomping at the bit. Like I want to start production. I want to get on set. Mm-hmm. But the passion, the reason why all that stuff is number one, you guys are qualified enough as filmmakers to see, oh yeah, we could probably do this for about 100,000 cash. Now we'll still get some favors and some deals, but yeah, we could do this for 100,000 cash. If not, then maybe you'll consider, well, we could do this for 250. That's still a real easy number to raise, $250,000. Yeah. I mean, your 5,000 minimum is a joke. Yeah. Then what you can do from there is just make sure either the $100,000 script or the 200, make sure that the story can fit in that budget. If it's gonna have like a cop chase scene inside a shopping mall or something like that, probably not going to work in a $100,000 script. Mm-hmm. And you can adjust that because you're a screenwriter.
Right. Yeah, send it off to the writer, make it his problem. Yeah, which is me. Yeah, and Brad.
Yeah.
So okay, so I could literally talk to you for forever.
Yeah.
I could too. I love talking, but I've got a podcast coming up here.
Just to wrap things up, let everybody know if they are interested in talking to you or listening to your show. Like, let people know where to find you so they can listen or learn from you or approach you or anything like that. Where do you want people to go?
Real simple. FinanceYourMovie.com.
FinanceYourMovie.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
The podcast is there. Our blog is there, and you can direct message me or email me there. If you have doesn't have to be perfect, but if you have a synopsis or a skeleton of a business plan, because I don't write business plans, and if you don't really have the semblance of a business plan, I'll send you to a couple of people that I know and trust that can write a killer business plan, like Louise Levinson I message. But if you have everything together, and I feel there's a potential marketability from my view, and I'm only one guy, then we can do a phone call from there to determine whether or not we can work together. And it's not so much, like I said, I don't have a big ego or whatever, but I just don't want to get in the position I ever take a client where I even have an inkling. I'm not sure if I can help raise their $250,000, because that's my whole thing. If I took one client and I didn't raise their money, oh my God, it would be all over the internet, and I don't want to. I don't ever want to be that person.
Yeah, hey, did you hear Scott DuPont failed?
Yeah, he took my money. He said he could help me raise money, and he didn't do it.
Yeah. So that's actually, that is like a solid, like, should I, 1, 2, 3.
And there's some people are like Brad, dude. You're not shy. Some people say, oh, we're a little quiet, we're a little shy. You're not.
Annoying. He's annoying.
But if you feel that way, don't email me what you have to me. Email it to one of your producer friends. Have somebody look at it. Somebody who's in the business that might be able to give you advice. That's the first step. Reach out. There's a lot of people who simply want to help, and that's really my mission. I'm not in production on a film right now. I don't have anything really ready to go right now. My mission is to help other people get their money so I can tell their story. And if you can indulge me for 2 minutes, I'll share a quick story how I got to this mission.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. You guys remember the TV show Rizzoli and Isles with Angie Harmon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Great show. It was on about 7 years, filmed down at the Paramount Studios lot. I was lucky enough to be a detective in the brig, kind of like a featured background. I wasn't like one of the main characters like Bruce or Angie or any of them, but I was lucky enough for 5 seasons to have a steady job in Hollywood, which is great. And it was only 2 or 3 days a week. So I could be writing, I could be producing my other projects, I could be acting once in a while on other people's projects, but it was steady money. And we would be on the soundstage every day with this group of detectives, okay, that were kind of in there. It's like a core group of about 15 guys and a few girls. And we were a plainclothes detective. We all had suits. And what's amazing is I never ever prejudge anybody. Okay, if I did prejudge somebody, I wouldn't have gotten my first $780,000 investor playing frisbee. But that's a whole other story. You can hear the podcast. But I'm sitting down next to these other detectives. None of us are like the main characters, or most of us don't even have lines. Okay, we're basically featured background. And one guy sitting next to me is an Academy Award winner. Another person sitting next to me wrote the screenplay for a Jason Statham film, which went to theaters with Jet Li. You can look it up. I forget the name of the movie. Another person had gotten an option from Netflix. So all these talented, creative people that are basically doing background, as was I. And there's this older guy, he was in his 60s or something like that, and he had this incredible screenplay. He'd won a screenplay competition, and for like 10 years, this guy was pitching and pitching and pitching, trying to get into Paramount Studios or Universal Studios or Netflix or Amazon or Sony Pictures, and he couldn't get in. And I'm like, dude, just raise the money yourself.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose? You wasted 10 years. What happens if you spend 6 months? And he could do the budget for $500,000. It wasn't a lot of money.
Jeez.
And 6 months later, the guy didn't show up for work one day. It's like, hey, where's so-and-so? So you didn't hear? No, he died.
Oh, my God. I thought you were going to say he got his film.
Our
He got his film
friend who's in this core group every single week, 2 or 3 days a week, we're hanging out for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Got to know these people really, really well. A lot of them are still my best friends.
Yeah.
And this one guy, because he never tried, took his and everyone was raving about his screenplay, but he let Universal Studios and Sony Pictures tell him in his mind, oh, it's not good enough. Since he never tried to raise the money himself, that screenplay went to the graveyard with him.
Yeah.
That's my mission. That's my why.
Yeah. Well, I say it sometimes and it always catches people off guard, but like we will all be dead soon. Whenever it is, it's always going to feel like it's too soon.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to wrap it up.
Make your film or die.
Make your film before you die, motherfucker.
That's a great title for a film, by the way.
Make your film or die.
You can keep that.
It's the it's the name of our documentary about all the films we haven't gotten made. Okay, so that's it. Literally, I mean, my mind is spinning because there's so many other things we could talk about. I really appreciate you coming on and talking and sharing your dropping an hour worth of truth nuggets for us. I really appreciate it. So finance. What is it? I don't want to say it wrong.
FinanceYourMovie.com.
FinanceYourMovie.com.
Yep.
Find him. He's obviously a very nice person and knows what the hell he's talking about. We really appreciate you coming on. If you want to get us, I'm Beckmeyer.
I'm at Balding Ewok everywhere.
And I'm Beckmeyer everywhere. You can send us an email at filmreverypodcast@gmail.com.
Or
let us know.
At Super Mega Ultra.
Oh, yeah, and SMUentertainment.com is our website. So that's it. We will see you again next time.
Thank you, guys. And if anyone in the audience is listening, when you guys finally announce your next film, you should announce it to the audience, because I bet some audience members would love to invest in your movie.
Oh. We're gonna
because you guys know what you're doing. I mean, I wouldn't steer people to people who have never made a film. You guys are the real deal.
Everybody listening should listen to him.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thanks a lot. That's it for this time. We'll see you again next time.
The end.
Cut. All right. Thank you so much. I hope we didn't hold you for too long. I really appreciate it.
No. We're all good.
I really appreciate it. Good luck.
I gotta end the thing. Hold on.
Oh yeah.
I gotta do this and.
Yeah, we can let him go. Sorry.